In the last video, we talked about the controversy that exists around the theory of evolution and the origin of life. And I also introduced the idea that there are actually two separate things. That the theory of evolution is the best explanation for the way that life is and how it works and how it changes over time. And that in the scientific community, there is actually no dissension as to whether or not evolution actually happens. That from microevolution to macroevolution, the mechanisms of evolution have been observed over and over again and are understood as facts in science. And that the theory of evolution is the best explanation of these facts. And that when we say the word theory, we don't mean just an idea, but we mean something that's supported by a lot of evidence. And therefore, the theory of evolution is something that in science is not up to contention. But when you talk about the origin of life, you're talking about something completely different. The theory of evolution is about how species come from other species, or how life changes over time. The origin of life is something else entirely. And it doesn't even make sense to talk about evolution in the origin of life, because evolution is a characteristic of life. So there couldn't have been evolution before there was life. Natural selection, mutations, genetic drift, non-random mating, sexual selection, all the processes that lead to microevolution, isolation, allopathic speciation, sympatric speciation, all the processes that led to macroevolution, all of these things are characteristics of life. So it doesn't make sense to talk about evolution and the origin of life, two separate issues. So it is possible for you to look at evolution and accept evolution and not necessarily think about the origin of life as a separate concept. Although the origin of life, as explained by science, is also based on principles of logic, of physics, of chemistry, or in other words, the things that we understand about the universe and the way we know the universe actually works. But I would argue that it's a far cry from being as substantiated by evidence the way the evolution actually is. Because you see, we have seen evolution happen from microscopic to macroscopic. We've seen species changing, the populations making shifts. We've seen macroevolution. We've seen changes from one species to another. Actual species becoming other species. The fossil record is full of evidence of the history of transition of space and time, of adaptive radiation and all the different things of mass extinctions and the beginning of new kinds of life. We've seen all of the aspects of evolution, including the formation of new structures, the formation of new genes, of new information. All evolution is actually substantiated. But to say the same about the origin of life would be an exaggeration. Although we've seen a lot of evidence for each of the potential steps that were necessary for the origin of life to take place, no one's actually seen origin of life the way we have actually seen evolution. So it's a little bit different, and it's also different theory. It's a different concept. The theory of evolution is about how life changes. Now, abiogenesis is how about life started, and they're actually two separate things. But there is a lot of mysticism about the origin of life. And in fact, if you think about the history of the earth, many different cultures have tried to explain this magic thing that they call how life could possibly have started. It seems to be a curiosity that all of human race has always had. Because you see, the problem with the history of life is that it's a never-ending question. You know, if you say this is how it started, then you have to ask, well, but what started that? And we're going to go back to this concept in a second when we talk about creationism. But the idea of the origin of life is inevitably mystical in a lot of humans' minds, because what we can't understand, we usually attribute to magic historically. Think about it. If in the Middle Ages you came and said, we stepped on the moon, people would have said, oh my gosh, that is, witchcraft, it's magic, and probably wouldn't even believe you in the first place. But if you also said in Middle Ages that the Earth orbit the Sun, people would also not understand that. But science has proved again and again that when we actually find better evidence and better technology to explain things, what we used to not understand, we would call magic or miracles, becomes actually something that's explainable, or a natural phenomena that sometimes we can even replicate. And so science is constantly showing that the change in our understanding makes us see that most of the things we call mystical are only things we currently don't understand. Maybe the origin of life is the same way. Keep an open mind as we go into this lecture series to think about that in contrast to the mysticism that has surrounded historically the origin of life, the skepticism and the inquiry of science wants to actually answer the question how that could have possibly happened and what are the facts about that. But let's just review briefly, and for once only, what are all of these other ideas about the origin of life? Because in this lecture series, we are going to focus on the scientific presentation for the origin of life, but to do justice to the society and everything else, I want to talk about some other ideas about the wild way that life started. Remember, mysticism has been the norm. And I want you to realize, though, that the creationist version of the Christian, Judaic, or Islamic story of the one God creating the world is only one of the many stories for creation. Stories for creation are abundant all over the world, and there's many religions. There are thousands of religions around the world, each with its own creation dogma, its own mystical account of the way that the earth actually started, the way that the universe was created, the way that life came to the earth, the origin of humans, the value of the soul, or the origin of the soul, and all of these different things. And so in science, of course, we don't go into those areas. We try to explain things with physical and chemical principles. But there's a lot of stories to explain the origin of life. Many of these stories is what we call creation stories, or also called intelligent design stories. Now, by the way, when you hear the word intelligent design, that's just another word for creationism. All right? Some people call it intelligent design to make it sound more scientific, and they present things that seem like scientific arguments, but they're still based on faith arguments. They're still things that cannot actually be proven. Intelligent design, or that someone put the rules in place and then life actually started based on those rules, it is still not actually, it's an excuse. It's putting the origin of the universe into someone else. But remember that all of these creation accounts do not actually answer the question of origin, if you really stop to think about it. Philosophically, if you say that a creator made everything, then you still have to ask the question of what made that creator. Now, a lot of the mystical accounts will say there was no creation for the creator because the creator was always there. But then you didn't really answer the question of origin, did you? So you see that for science, you understand that those origin questions may be not a question that can be answered in the first place because it's an infinite question. But science also actually has explanations for the origin of the universe and the origin of life, which are based on scientific principles, which don't necessarily excuse or just find a magical solution. In literature, we call it Deus ex machina, something magical that explains the origin of all things. And it doesn't really explain the origin of that, though. So in science, we try to explain things in a finite way, even as we understand the infinite nature of that question. But creation accounts are not only the Christian, Judaic, Islamic version of creation. And, Hinduism, Shintoism, Confucianism, Taoism, I can go on and on and on about all the different religions of the world. Everybody has their own version of the story of creation. And I want to also point out that the intelligent design, when you hear that, it's not science, okay? They may make it sound like a science, but it's still trying to prove that a being created either the world or the rules to create the world. In other words, that doesn't really answer the question of origin, and it's not really based on scientific principles. Eventually, you're going to have to go into the realm of belief. Now, a lot of people in the creation design or the intelligent design area would say that scientists believe in things too. Not really. Scientists disbelieve everything. We are constantly questioning and inquiring about the universe, and we don't actually just blindly believe in things. We ask for evidence. So we don't believe. It's the opposite of belief. Belief is accepting things, accepting a creator, accepting it without any evidence of it. In science, we actually don't accept anything. We question everything, and we only accept it for now until we have better evidence to show it that maybe something else explains the things better. So that is the basic difference between these views of the origin of life and the scientific views of the origin of life. The scientific views of the origin of life seek out evidence to explain the origin of life, while the other views are trying to only accept. At some point, they're making leaps of faith where they are accepting things without evidence. The other biggest difference is that the intelligent design argument doesn't actually try to prove creation. What it tries to do is, most cases, is to disprove evolution. And that's not necessarily a way to prove anything. You don't prove things by proving its opposite is wrong, right? At best, what you would say is that there's problems with evolution, which scientists accept themselves. There are still things that we still have to research and understand better. Nothing in science is 100% correct. We leave room for changes and for improvement of the scientific knowledge. But that means that in science, we're willing to change. And that's not something that you can say about creationism or the intelligent design view of the origin of life. But without getting into details about creationist accounts, I won't, because there's 200,000 different versions. So to do it justice for the creation accounts, all I can do is to say that different people have different stories to talk about how life started, but that ultimately all these stories are mystical and magical in nature. And they have something in common. A lot of these religious stories have the idea of vitalism, or the idea that there's something special about life, that life has some sort of power, some mystical energy that makes life possible. And that for that reason, it will be impossible for science to ever create life or observe the beginning of life in the same fashion of the creationists or any other intelligent design person would say that life came but to be, because there is an essence to life, something mystical and special about life. You may call it soul, you may call it energy, you may call it something that's tied into the cosmic plane of existence. That energy is what explains the existence of life. Vitalism. That life is different from things which are not alive. That inanimate dead objects are essentially different from objects which are alive in some sort of ethereal thing that we cannot actually touch or ever measure. And that idea of vitalism permeates all the accounts of religious origins of life. All right? And that's why it makes it so important for them to believe in creationism, because it gives life its important meaning. But I wonder what's going to happen to that view if scientists ever replicate life. And I will point out here that scientists have already created a cell. All right? We actually got DNA. We produced that own DNA in the laboratory, put it inside a pre-existing cell, and created a new cell. All right? But you may argue that we didn't create the cell from scratch, but that is going to happen someday. And then if it does, I wonder what that will say about the people who believe in vitalism as part of their religion. Now, another part of the origin of life that most people already, don't agree with, either creationists or scientific views of life, both discount the idea of spontaneous generation, or the idea that life comes out of nothing and that it just shows up. Like, for example, maggots showing up on a piece of meat, or rats showing up from, a place where you're storing a lot of rice or wheat. We all know that all life, seems to come from pre-existing life, or at least the life that is here now. But spontaneous generation at one point in history was the way that some people thought that life just showed up. Now either approach, creationist or scientific way of looking at life, accepts that there is an origin, that there is a start, and that life must have come from something else. Now, obviously, the intelligent design version says that life came from another higher power of life, another form of life. Well, abiogenesis theory, which is accepted in science, talks about physical and chemical principles that led to the formation of life without its pre-existing life. So, after the spontaneous generation was disproven by scientists like Louis Pasteur, it became a concept in science that life can only come from pre-existing life. And a lot of creationists and intelligent design proponents will actually use that 200-year-old piece of science to defend their idea, to say, see, even science says that life can only come from pre-existing life. But Pasteur was not talking about the origin of life. It was talking about life coming from life right now. Different concepts. So that's, again, an example of a creationist or intelligent design proponent using science in the wrong way to prove the wrong thing. Another interesting thing about the origin of life is the idea of panspermia or transpermia, or the idea that life came from somewhere else, that the organic particles which led to the formation of life on Earth actually came from a comet, from another planet where life already existed. And so that's the idea of transpermia, that life came from another planet where life already existed through a comet, that it hit the Earth in the early Earth. Or panspermia, that actually there are advanced life forms in the universe which go around planets which can have life, and they seed life into those planets and make that life possible. But just like with the creation account, that does not solve the origin of life question, because all it does, it transfers the question somewhere else. So how did life start on that planet? Or how did that civilization actually begin? So remember, panspermia is the idea that something is seeding the universe with life, and transpermia is that comets are actually bringing life from one planet to another, but that doesn't actually answer the question of how life actually started in those places as well. So finally, the view that we're actually going to be talking about in this lecture series is the idea of abiogenesis, that scientists, through chemical and physical principles and logic, actually tries to explain the origin of life in the conditions that would be present in the early Earth through the process that we called abiogenesis. And we start talking about that in the next videos of the lecture series. I'll see you guys then.